to part 6 of this series on pentatonics and getting you started on improvising. Now, today what I'm going to talk about is vibrato and bending strings. Now, these are two huge parts of getting a nice descriptive sound into your playing. So I'm going to take a little example of a really, really well-known beginning to a solo. I'm probably not on the right guitar for it. In fact, I'm definitely not on the right guitar for it, but that doesn't matter. It's the notes. Have a listen to this. Well, that doesn't sound very good, does it? What if I played like this? Yeah, that's changed completely. Okay. So bending strings, a very, very descriptive sort of way of creating a note. Dramatic, if you will. So I want to first talk about vibrato, because that and bending strings are actually very, very strongly linked for reasons which will become obvious fairly shortly. Let's say we're playing over something like this. So it's a fairly laid back sort of blues. Okay, we want to be fitting in with what we're playing along with. Okay, so when we play a vibrato over something like that, we don't want to go like this. It's nothing. That's nothing to do with the piece of music that's going along. Okay, the music. It's kind of laid back. It's fairly cool. So we want, if we're playing vibrato, it's got to be like that. Yeah, so you're thinking about the tempo and the feel of the music. Yeah, so using that vibrato on notes gives it a nice sort of rolling sort of feel. So vibrato is slightly bending a string, or agitating a string, if you will, to create more sustain and also more movement in the sound. There's a point where when you do this, where it stops sounding good. It starts sounding out of tune, especially if you do it with a root note. That just doesn't sound very nice at all. The reason it doesn't sound very nice is because we perceive it to be out of tune. So there's a tolerance, if you will. If you've got your pitch here and the limit of your vibrato there, and if you're within those 2 points, that's great. If you're above that point, it will just sound out of tune. Now I'm going to come back to that concept in a moment, but I'm now going to move on to the idea of bending strings. Now, bending a string is really slightly different from vibrato. Although you're moving the pitch, you're moving it a particular amount, whereas with a vibrato you're just toying with it. If we're then effectively retuning a string temporarily, then it's a good starting point to have something to aim for, which is pretty obvious when you get to it. Now what I mean by that is, let's suppose we've got A minor here, okay, and we're going to look at bending the 3rd string. Now, I'm going to talk about the mechanics of that in a minute, but okay, now it's easy to hear this note in the middle of that chord. Okay, and I'm going to bend from here, our starting point, the 7th fret of our 3rd string, and I'm going to bend that until it sounds like the 2nd string at the 5th fret. It's a lot easier to picture that in your mind if you think of it as trying to get to a destination pitch, which is going to be here, rather than on another string. It's a little bit easier to see in your mind's eye. Yeah, I'm aiming for that pitch. But what I don't do, at least not to start, I mean, you can go and start dead on the pitch. But when you're trying to learn how to do this, what you want to do is think of it just manoeuvring it towards that pitch. You don't want to go past it. Suddenly start sounding very unpleasant. Okay, but you can slide into that pitch. Yeah, no problem with that. And as we now know, we've got a passing note in between, but the beauty of bending a string is you've got so many different little integers of pitch. And again, on the way down. Okay, now this brings us back to vibrato, because when we've played a bent string, we don't want to just come back to a note which is very dead. Because that's so, what should we say, liquid in its sound, you don't just want to be dumped on dry land straight away. So when you come out of a bend, let's have a little bit of vibrato on that last note. And also, another very useful thing to do is just to snap from 7 back to 5. So it keeps that fluidity going. Okay, so that's bending our third string. Now, as I said, it's a reasonably easy target to hear, to bend to get to that second string. Okay. Now you can bend lots of other strings. You go, but that's a little bit more laborious to do. So we're starting with something which is nice and easy to bend. So we need to take a quick look at the mechanics of how that works. Now you'll notice I've got my thumb on the top of the neck here, and that's because the whole angle of my hand now has changed. I've got hold of the neck. Okay. Now, I often used to think of this a bit like pushing a car, really. So this is the driver of the car. He's actually steering, but we've got his two mates here helping him to push. You don't want to be doing this. That's really hard to do. Okay, get those fingers in. They're angled back. They're just sloping back slightly. And if you think of the string as a circle, and your fingers would normally be on top, you're actually pushing more from the side of the string, because what you're trying to do is push it across the neck, okay, whilst holding it down. So as I turn my wrist, I can get to the pitch quite easily. Now if you look at where my wrist is now, and I drop it back down again, you'll notice the crucial thing here is my fingers actually haven't moved very much at all. A lot of people think bending a string is this, where you kind of stretch your fingers out. You could do, but it's not very reliable. You're much better off keep those fingers locked, would be too strong a word, but certainly firm. Okay, and then you've got that control. Okay, now one last word about vibrato and how it interacts with bent strings. Now earlier on we talked about the tolerance pitch-wise. So here's our pitch, here's our tolerance. Beyond that it's out of tune. Now the great thing with a bent string is we've still got the same tolerance, but on both sides of the pitch, because we can drop underneath it. So instead of, we've got that if we want. Anyway, okay, so that's it for this particular video, just to get us started on bending strings. I'm going to look at a couple of other places that we could employ bent strings within this same fingering in the next video. Anyway, if you could press the subscribe button, that'd be great, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.